Okay guys, well I thought I'd do a Earth Changes update just because we are now seeing some record cold events happening in the Northern Hemisphere, and these events are happening in the middle of summer. Now this article that was published on the 12th of August 2016 goes on to say that surface frost strikes Germany as mid-August temperatures shatter old records. A blast of polar air swept across Central Europe from Wednesday through Thursday, sending temperatures tumbling to record lows. And this is in mid-August in parts of Germany. So many locations saw new all-time mid-August records set for the lowest high recorded, with many places failing to reach 15 degrees Celsius. Meteorologists called the cold for this time of year unusual. German meteorologist Dominic Young said that a number of German stations recorded surface frost and that in the middle of peak summer it was colder than Christmas Day in 2015. And then it goes on to give us some more of these record cold temperatures. And so again, let's remember that this is occurring in the middle of summer in the Northern Hemisphere. Now we're also seeing more of these cold weather events happening in Northern Europe. This article that was published on the 12th of August goes on to say that Northern Europe was hit with some weird August weather in the past week as summer snow fell on Sweden, and a city in Saxony experienced its coldest temperature on record. Sweden was hit with summer snow on Thursday, and while temperatures across Sweden are expected to stay between 50 and 60 degrees Fahrenheit, ski resort owners were thrilled to see the snow. So again, we're starting to see more of these cold events occurring in the Northern Hemisphere, and this is happening in the middle of summer. And we're also failing to see the mainstream media or the mainstream media weather channels addressing these cold events. If we have an anomaly where the temperatures are in the higher end of the spectrum, we see that they are reporting on these events, and we are finding all of this information provided in regards to these events when they're in the higher end of the temperature. But as soon as we're seeing these cold events, we have to actually go and search out this information for ourselves from smaller journalists that are relaying this information on these smaller media outlets, because we will not find this information on the mainstream media. This information is not following the global warming narrative that they are pushing on the masses. And this global warming is nothing but a fallacy. We are seeing temperature extremes of both hot and cold, but we are now beginning to see these cold events happening more often because we are moving into a cooling. And this is why we're also seeing that the sun is exhibiting less sunspots and less solar flux. And in fact, we have just seen the weakest solar cycle in 200 years. And this is something that they see before we move into mini ice ages, and we are moving into another one of these ice ages, except this is at the end of the cycle, and this is what the Norse mythology called the Ragnarok or Fimbulwinter, and this is what we're moving towards now. And so it's interesting that we do see that they are now warning that next year we can expect to experience extreme cold events happening in the Northern Hemisphere. Now, this article was also published on the 12th of August, and it goes on to say that there was snow in Slovenia, and they also experienced hail and rain and very bad weather, but there was snow in the middle of summer. And so again, we're seeing this very unusual weather occurring in midsummer, and snow is falling in these areas. So This is no surprise that we see experts now warning that we are headed for a mini ice age, and they're saying that this could be as soon as next year, and they're warning that this can trigger blackouts in Britain. And now if we are seeing the warning of these events triggering blackouts throughout the United Kingdom, then I would also be paying attention to this if you live in the US, because your infrastructure when it comes to your power grids is also very dilapidated, and so any extra stress placed on the energy grid is going to result in it being unable to cope. So you really do want to prepare for these events. Collect wood and at least have a backup plan so that if you do need to keep warm, you can at least prepare yourself to find alternative ways of being able to actually survive through these extreme weather events. So it goes on to say that these climate experts are now saying that they can expect that because we're now seeing the El Nino transitioning into a La Nina, and this means that the sea is cooling at the equator, because the La Nina, or El Nino, sorry, is when the ocean temperatures at the equator are warming. When it transitions into a La Nina is when they are cooling, and this is also what they are saying is going to trigger colder events globally. And so when we look at the La Nina and the ocean temperatures at the equator cooling, as well as we're now seeing the sun beginning to weaken even more and even less sunspots and less solar flux, they are now warning that all of this is indicating that we are going to be moving towards a cooling. And the Norse mythology has given us plenty of warnings of the indicators that we should be looking for and observing before we move into what they call Fimbulwinter and the Ragnarok. And we are actually seeing all of these indicators come to pass. So again, all we can do is really continue observing and doing our own independent research, because really, unless you're just going to get these types of articles probably once every few months, you're really not going to be given any information about all of these other events that are happening in different parts of the world, because this just does not fit the narrative that the earth is warming and it is the fault of humans. This is all something that is a naturally occurring part of the cycle. There are influences and forces much larger than us that we are at the mercy of, and mankind are soon to learn this. They are not going to escape what is approaching in regards to what is occurring regarding all of these catastrophic events when it comes to the weather, and not only to these cold events, but flooding also. We're seeing massive flooding occurring over in the US again, massive flooding occurring over in Asia, and this is just going to continue. I mean, I don't think it has stopped flooding over in the US since the beginning of the year. I think there has been some state or some part of the US in flood since the beginning of the year. Every week we are seeing some part of the US flooding. Anyway, I will post all of these articles underneath and you can check them out for yourself in more detail. And as always, peace out.